Now that April is in the rearview mirror, you may be wondering, will the wet weather continue into the remainder of the spring season? Meteorologist John Birchfield here in this week's edition of the Climate Friday newsletter. We're going to be looking ahead towards the month of May, as many area farmers and gardeners wondering, will the rain let up? We're also going to look in the past and recap this historically rainy, not only April, but also start to the calendar year as a whole, and break down some of the numbers that describe just how wet and warm this year has been so far. So let's get into the numbers as we recap the wettest April on record in Toledo history, and also some exceptionally warm and wet weather that has characterized 2024 so far. Now that April is in the books, we can recap the climatological data, looking back at rainfall in particular. That is how the month will stand out to many of you. Remember, almost 8 inches of rainfall. That makes it the all-time wettest April on record. In addition to heavy rain, it was also frequent. In fact, 60% of the entire month was filled with rainy days, and only 40%, or 12 days, featured dry conditions. The monthly rainfall was close to 4.5 inches above average, and we're looking at the list of the wettest Aprils on record. We shattered the previous record that was set in 1929 with 7.13 inches of rainfall. Another rainy April in recent memory, that is 2011, with a little over half a foot of rainfall. 1977, 1950, and 1910 round out the list, but 2024 bringing the most rainfall since we started taking weather observations back in the 1870s in the Toledo area. In addition to heavy rain, it was also frequent rain. 18 April days featured rainfall, and only 12 days were rain-free. So the vast majority of days of the month did include rain in the forecast. With that record rainfall, we also fared well above average in the temperature department. That is also not surprising. We had frequent rain and even some early season thunderstorms last month. With an average temperature close to 54 degrees, that makes it the 8th warmest on record. Now our average high temperature for the month was closer to 64, and using that as a metric, it was the 11th warmest on record. That number includes the daytime highs as well as the overnight low temperatures. So where do we stand for the whole spring season? Our spring rainfall currently is close to 1 foot of rain, with over 11.6 inches of rain accumulation. Normally through this time in early May, we'd be at only a little over 1/2 foot. So spring rainfall is essentially nearly double what is typical for this time of year. Now, rainy weather has not only characterized the spring season, but really this entire calendar year so far. In fact, looking at the first 4 months of the year, January through April, this has been the 3rd wettest start to a calendar year on record. Breaking down the numbers, it is truly incredible how much rain has fallen this year. Just this season so far, we've seen 16.87, and we're only 1/3 of the way through the year. Topping the list is 1950, which had over 19 inches of rain through today's date. 1913 had close to 19 inches of rain through the first 4 months of the year. And there's 2011 again, which brought exceptionally mild conditions from the late winter into the early spring. And another in fairly recent memory is 09, which had almost 15 inches of rain through the month of April. So looking at that first 4-month period of the year, we are the 3rd wettest on record, and also warm is another way to describe how this year has panned out so far. With an average temperature of 41.3, we are ranked as number 2 for the warmest January through April, only behind 1880, which had an average temperature of 41.6. So a little milder than that, but 1880 did not include nearly as much rain as this. It's been a rare combination of warm and wet conditions through the start of the year so far. Now, rainfall has been so frequent that we have to go all the way back to late February to even find a 5-day stretch without any rainfall. In fact, that occurred on the 18th through the 22nd of February. So the rainfall has really just been one system after another. In addition to heavy rain, it has been very commonplace and frequent this year so far. Not only has Toledo, Northwest Ohio, and Southern Michigan seen record rain, but across a good portion of the United States, many areas have been inundated. Looking at the last 30 days across the United States, now there's a number of weather observation sites, but a number of rainfall records have been shattered. In fact, 1,745 across America in the last month alone. That is the number of daily rainfall records that have been broken. Some of those occurring here, others across a good portion of the country. So many folks have wondered, will this stretch of weather continue into May, and when will we get some relief? Well, April and May weather are not always correlated, but sometimes the weather pattern does spill into the next month, and that is what we're seeing in the 10-day forecast. past is that this damp weather pattern is likely to bleed into the month of May. Now, 2011 is a good example because we had the third wettest April with over half a foot of rainfall, and May followed it with another wet month. May of 2011 brought nearly 6 inches of rain, which is essentially double what is normal. Now, we talked about that being one of the wettest starts to the year on record and wettest years as a whole. So that was one instance where a wet May did follow a wet April. Not always necessarily related, but we are tracking a weather pattern that'll likely feature above average rainfall for the next at least 10 days, if not 2 weeks. Looking at 2011, we did have over 15 inches of rainfall during the first 4 months of the year. And even though it was an exceptionally wet start to the year, it did feature less rain than we've gotten so far in 2024. The long-range outlook is going to bring us above average rainfall amounts, and that is likely to continue for the first 2 full weeks of the month of May. The sweet spot for rainfall is likely to be somewhere in the Ohio River Valley, where we're going to see a parade of systems that brings with it rain chances and even some thunderstorms as well. We'll keep a very close eye on the weather pattern, but a lot of gardeners and farmers are going to be concerned if we continue to see these frequent downpours and thunderstorms. We'll continue to keep you updated as the month of May unfolds. If you're not already subscribed, WTOL.com/email. That is where you can find the latest climate change related information coming straight to your inbox each and every Friday.